Welcome to the podcast series titled Global Resilience for National Cybersecurity, Strengthening the Interconnections Among Actors. This is Greta Nasi, co-director of the Master of Science in Cyber Risk Strategy and Governance, jointly offered by Bocconi University and Polytechnic of Milan. Together with Professor MacArthur, adjunct professor at Bocconi, we discuss with our guests key topics on the role of government and cybersecurity. This project was made possible thanks to a grant from the US Mission to Italy, and it holds the patronage of the Italian Parliamentary Anti-Mafia Commission. Trade and cybersecurity are increasingly intertwined. The global expansion of the Internet and increased use of data flows by businesses and consumers for communication, e-commerce, and as a source of information and innovation are transforming trade. In addition, the increased number of cyber attacks resulted in extended and costly disruption of several interconnected services, result in economic and reputational losses for the hacked organization, and may cause greater indirect effects at a societal level. Government has the power to take actions to protect firms and organizations, thus they need to have a full understanding of the value at risk in cybersecurity. The scope of this podcast is to advance the mutual collaboration in cybersecurity policies to discuss what value is at risk for the competitiveness of firm and a state and the gap in the existing national cybersecurity strategies. Thank you to our guest speakers, Matteo Bonfanti, International Strategic Relations at the Italian Cybersecurity Agency, Kevin Desouza, Professor at Queensland University of Technology, Enrico Mercadante, Architecture, Sales and Innovation at Cisco, Honorable Giulia Pastorella, Member of the Italian Chamber of the Parliament, Giuseppe Russo, Security Assurance Manager at AWS, and Oreste Pollicino, Professor at Università Bocconi. Colin, over to you.
Matteo Bonfanti works in International Strategic Relations of the Italian Cybersecurity Agency. Mr. Bonfanti, in setting up the Italian cybersecurity strategy, what are the critical principles of trade and economic competitiveness that you've had in mind? What impact do you aim to make?
So, the national cybersecurity strategy is premised upon economic consideration. This is evident from the objectives that it sets, the measures it outlines, and the theoretical assumption it is built on. Because the strategy sees and interprets cybersecurity as a multifaceted and multidisciplinary team, where security, national security, political, geopolitical, social, and economic aspects are at stake. The strategy was adopted in May 2022, and it consists of two documents. The strategic concept that sets three main strategic objectives: protection, response, and development, and the implementation plan that outlines 81 measures to achieve those objectives. Actually, the measures are 82, and the 82nd, it's about the definition of key performance indicators to measure, to assess the implementation of the strategy. Under the protection objective are listed those measures that aim at safeguarding national strategic and critical assets from malicious cyber activities. I refer to assets that underline the execution of essential states functions and the provision of essential services. These are the ICT core assets that are used by organizations, for example, enterprises and businesses, to run their activities on ordinary basis. So these measures are aimed at protecting these assets, and so at protecting the society and the economy and the competitiveness of the Italian industrial sector. Under the response objective, there are those measures that are aimed at reacting and recovering from cyber incidents. These are measures also dealing with deterrence and attribution of malicious cyber attacks. But under the development objective are listed those measures that makes explicit that promoting cybersecurity means sustaining the economic growth and well-being of Italy. There are measures that really make clear that cybersecurity is strictly linked and pivotal for the economic well-being and prosperity of Italy. These are all the measures that are aimed at supporting research, development, and the adoption of cybersecure technologies and technological solutions for cybersecurity. They are aimed at sustaining national industries and enterprises, including small, medium enterprises and startups, to flourish, to grow, to become competitive. Altogether, these are measures that are aimed at sustaining national and European strategic autonomy in the technological field. Where for autonomy, I mean the capacity, the ability of Italy and of Europe to acquire, develop capabilities and also competencies in cybersecurity to pursue their strategic core interest without undue interference from third parties. So, from the protection through the response to the development related measures, the strategy aims at building a secure and trustworthy cyberspace and digital technological ecosystem. I refer to trust because trust is a precondition for the functioning of the digital market, is a precondition for the functioning of the economy. Of course, the strategy aims to pursue ambitious objectives that to be achieved, they require really their achievement, they require the synergy and the collective contribution of national and European international cybersecurity stakeholders, because cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
Kevin Desouza is a professor at Queensland University of Technology. Professor Desouza, what are the gaps that may hinder healthy trade in cyberspace? What cyber risks are you foreseeing?
So I think there are four major issues that need to be addressed. Number one being the critical dependency of private cyber infrastructure and how it impacts government operations. And so in Australia, for example, we have had a couple of major breaches in terms of one of the largest telecommunications provider and one of the largest insurance provider. And in both cases, data such as passport details, driver's licenses were breached to the point where the telecommunications provider had to pay to replace the passports of Australian citizens and also the driver's licenses. And these created more stress on public infrastructure. Similarly, we have seen cases where healthcare records have been compromised, and if these incidents continue where citizen data that's owned or stored in private enterprises continues to be compromised, people are going to lose their trust in the cyber infrastructure and our ability to use it to promote trade. The second issue is the critical rise of artificially intelligence generated things like deep fakes and shallow fakes, which are increasingly become very prominent on cyber space. And these give rise to questions around intellectual property. These give questions that assess whether we can trust information online, whether we have a shared understanding of any events, so on and so forth. And no governments have put in place adequate policies to address these because they have to consider issues that are very complicated, kind of like the issues around freedom of speech, freedom of expression, so on and so forth. The third big issue is a lot of the critical technologies that we use to transact information and transact activities online have severe vulnerabilities. To give you the simplest example, most of us think about GPS as the ability just to go from point A to point B. But when GPS was created, it was meant as a tool to help us coordinate time. And recently, we have seen a rise in attacks on GPS systems. There are now cheaper tools out there for individuals to spoof GPS devices. So if we rely on such technologies and their authenticity and their credibility is undermined, these will have implications for the amount of business transactions. And then finally, we still don't know how dependent our cyber infrastructure is on each other. So to give you the example, when the financial crisis happened in 2008, just within Lehman Brothers, they had over 200 entities in over 20 countries and were party to over 900,000 contracts. Now, when that failure happened, it had a ripple effect through the entire financial system. We don't know how dependent each of our information systems is on each other. We still do not have unique identifiers for each one. And if we see a similar scale attack and a similar scale failure in terms of any of our critical data platforms, the effects will be quite severe in terms of trade and activity online.
Enrico Mercadante is from the Architecture, Sales, and Innovation Group at Cisco. Enrico, given the many small and medium enterprises you serve, which network and cyber challenges do they face? How do you support them, and what remains a challenge?
Today, the SMEs are mainly interconnected in global value chains, and digital technologies are enabling these global value chains. So IoT, cloud, AI are all enabling technologies that enable SMEs to interconnect with each other. And as a matter of fact, digital played a huge role in decreasing the cost of access to global value chains for SMEs. But it poses also some real challenges. Why? Because the weakest link in a supply chain can cause some issues also to the other participant in the value chain. And due to cybersecurity concern, the weakest link in an SME could be very damaging to the whole system. So we need to take particularly care about the cybersecurity of small, medium businesses. In reality, digital value chain have a fantastic impact because they increase the scope, increase the scale, and the speed of digital trade. On the other side, we need to be sure that no SMEs participated in this value chain is below what we call the security poverty line. What is a security poverty line? Is actually when a company is not able, because of lack of resources or skills, to stay up to speed with the latest cybersecurity challenges and risks and cope with the risk. So as a matter of fact, our focus is to connect, and by connecting, securing these value chains. So be sure that the connections are super secure, and also be sure that the SMEs have state-of-the-art cybersecurity technology that they can actually use, so that these are simple to use, simple to implement, so that they can go from coping with compliance to managing the real risk.
The Honora Giulia Pastorella is a deputy of the Italian Parliamentary Chamber. Deputy Pastorella, how is the Italian government approaching the challenges, including cybersecurity, of trade, competition, and competitiveness in cyberspace? What are the main priorities to address?
I think Italian governments, previous ones and the current one, have finally come to terms with the idea that I guess the digital economy, but also in particular cybersecurity, are absolutely key and central to the competitiveness of our country. And they've taken major steps, what I would see as major steps, but still not sufficient, in two directions. One is in terms of ensuring a better governance. Better governance means better institutions, and we finally have here in Italy a National Cybersecurity Agency, which, similarly to other countries, should play a number of roles, not only in emergency and response when it comes to attacks, but also in helping the economic ecosystem, companies, be they big or small, to actually understand the world of cybersecurity and be more prepared. And also has specific tasks regarding, for instance, cybersecurity certification, which is absolutely key and central when it comes to, say, public procurement and other kind of processes. So the governance is one aspect. The current government doesn't have a minister for innovation or digital, but it does have undersecretaries that look at these aspects, and there's one specifically dedicated to cybersecurity. When it comes to the second direction is one related more specifically to precisely the competitiveness of our economy when it comes to digital and cybersecurity. What I mean is that back in 2016, the then Renzi government proposed a law, a series of incentives basically called Industry 4.0, which included tax incentives for purchasing solutions in the cybersecurity space and the digital space, both in terms of software and hardware. And that was accompanied by centers, so competence centers and digital innovation hubs. There's differences, but basically they both try and help local companies, again, SMEs or big companies, it doesn't matter, to get the necessary training and competencies to deal with this 4.0 transition, and also to link them to the research space where there could be that, very same innovation that the company needs and doesn't know that is out there. So this has improved for sure the ecosystem, but there's still quite a lot to do. We don't look at cybersecurity as a sector, as an economic sector, but we mostly look at it as something like an unnecessary evil. Like, yes, you have to protect yourself because the world is mean and there's lots of bad actors. But I think the key going forward for all governments should be to really see cybersecurity also as a factor for growth and as a sector of the economy in itself, and not just as a defense mechanism, albeit absolutely necessary, as I said, and very much linked to national security. But once our next governments, future governments, will understand that aspect and will make sure that the basic conditions for this are met in the rest of the country, digital skills, digital divide, making sure the right infrastructure are there, and then building on that, then I think we can catch up with the other European partners and we can remain or become competitive in this space.
Giuseppe Russo is the Security and Assurance Manager at Amazon Web Services. Giuseppe, how do technology and cloud computing influence trade, and how it leads to new opportunities and challenges in cybersecurity from your perspective as a cloud provider?
Thank you for your question. Okay, in cyberspace, traditional companies are called to become companies that act in real time, adapting continuously and immediately to the changing conditions of a new digital or hybrid environment, sometimes where the same environment is conditioned by the need to operate and manage information in real time. So in order to do that, firms and enterprises must make the most of the new ICT technologies, and they must consider digital strategy as a fundamental part of their business. Among the new technologies, firms and enterprises are interested in leveraging big data, in managing the Internet of Things, and sometimes, and a lot of times, I will say, they want to use artificial intelligence. But A firm not always has the right knowledge and skills to manage such new patterns, so they leverage the flexibility and the low cloud entry barrier. In our experience as AWS, we see that customers use the cloud for several reasons. First of all, they want to reduce cost by accelerating cloud migration and modernizing legacy applications. They want to modernize the development of applications that allow new products to be deployed quickly. And they want to become a data-driven company through the use of cloud services like machine learning and artificial intelligence. Moreover, they want to leverage the ICT security posture of the AWS global infrastructure that may help them to improve their ability to meet fundamental security and compliance requirements, such as data localization, data protection, data confidentiality. And at the end, they want also to leverage the global presence of our AWS cloud infrastructure. In that way, they can reach a lot of customers around the world. So, thanks to cloud computing and the innovative technologies that the cloud comes with, enterprises may live in and operate in the cyberspace, but that is not enough, because enterprise must survive in the cyberspace. That is a real place where enterprises and firms cope with a lot of cyber risks. Global cloud service providers like AWS helps a lot to mitigate such cyber risks. Indeed, for example, we work hard every day to reduce that cyber risk by mitigating threats, increasing the resiliency capability for our customers. To do that, we implement a win-win model that we call shared responsibility model for security. And according to it, the cloud provider is responsible for the security of the cloud, from the infrastructure to every building blocks. Enterprises are responsible for the security in the cloud, and we provide them all services and tools to protect their workloads. Moreover, thanks to global presence of cloud infrastructure, that cloud infrastructure provides an easy way to implement resiliency for customers. If we put on top of this that we provide all appropriate cloud security services for customers in terms of whatever, protect, detect, investigate, respond, that we works a lot to protect the global infrastructure from DDoS attacks, for example. And we put in the hand of our customers all the techniques and services useful for encrypting data to obtain maximum confidentiality and privacy for all kinds of information they manage. So, just to close, I think that in this way, security is at the same time a really win-win model for producer, consumer, and their common cloud service provider, and is also a really business enabler for firms and enterprises.
Oreste Pollicino is a professor at Bocconi University. Professor Pollicino, in the context of internet regulation, what are the elements that foster trade, competition, and state competitiveness in cyberspace, and what are the gaps?
I think that it's very important, first of all, to let emerge the new framework of internet regulation in Europe. It's a new framework in which basically there is, I would say, an internal and external crisis of antitrust. The internal one is due to the fact that, for example, Digital Market Act is basically providing a new tool that was totally unknown for antitrust. It's the ex-ante tool. So basically to have the possibility to have an impact in advance and not after the behavior. And this is something that, for the classic approach to antitrust, it's really something revolutionary. The external crisis is that antitrust basically is not anymore enough for cyberspace in order to be regulated correctly, because there was a new phenomena. The new phenomena is the emerging of private powers. The new platforms became private powers and had a kind of shift from economic actors to private powers. So what does it mean? It means that Her Majesty Antitrust needs an help. Which help? Help from constitutional law, from constitutionalism, because the DNA of constitutionalism is exactly to limit powers. So we have a new season in which antitrust, constitutional law, should speak. This is, I think, a first point. The second point that I would like just to let emerge is the following. I think that we should not fall in the trap to see cybersecurity and data protection as enemies, because it's crucial to have another view. And now, for example, just to give you a personal experience, tomorrow I will be in Oslo to discuss a PhD dissertation exactly on the point that in a way is reflecting cybersecurity as new fundamental rights. What does it mean? It means that cybersecurity should not be seen as an obstacle to circulation of data, but should be seen as a fundamental right exactly on the same playground of data protection. I think that this kind of reconciliation is crucial for the next regulation of the market.
When we talk about cybersecurity, often we talk about it in terms of bad things that could happen. So much of our discussion is about the possible negative consequences of changes and actions in cyberspace. But I think today we've also started to hear about the possible positive implications of cybersecurity and cyberspace done well. When we build a cyberspace that is safe and valuable for society, it enables a lot to happen. And one of the topics we've heard about today over and over is the opportunity for new players to enter new markets through cyberspace. This can be one of the great opportunities of our next era. And cybersecurity, confidence in cyberspace, is one of the precursors to creating these new trade opportunities. So how does it happen? What did we hear today? Well, first of all, I think we heard across all our speakers the importance of trust. All of the actors engaging in trade on cyberspace have to trust in the system, in the other people, and they have to build this trust with each other. And so one of the goals of cybersecurity policy and action isn't just keeping systems safe from breach, but building a broader sense of trust in the system and in each other. And from that perspective, this big question of sovereignty means different things in different situations. What sovereignty means to generate trust in one country in one situation may mean something different than it does in another. And as a result, I think we're starting to see a more nuanced and sophisticated discourse around what cyber sovereignty really means and what it should mean in order to enable trust and ultimately create new positive opportunities. And with this trust comes the possibility of data exchange, which is one of the core elements of building a broader market based in cyberspace and not just physical space. So I think we're starting to see here some of the hopeful future opportunities for cyber policymakers. We're not just talking about bad things to avoid, but the good things that can come when we manage this space well, and particularly when we manage it with a broader frame, with this frame of public value and the importance of thinking about how we create not just secure systems, but trustworthy actors and actions within it.
Thank you to our guests, and thank you to the audience for listening to this podcast.